Baby, if you're listening to my voice, I need you to do just one thing. Don't go anywhere. Today, I'm coming to fulfill every promise that was once trapped behind the walls of distance. I've already booked my flight, and this time I'm not coming just to see you. I'm coming to prove that true love never loses its way. Maybe after today, our lives will change forever. So stay with me until the very end, because today I'm about to reveal the biggest truth of my life. I've taken countless journeys in my life, some for business, some because of responsibilities, some for people who needed me. But today's journey is different from all the others, because today I'm not traveling to a city, I'm traveling to my peace, and that peace is you. People often think love is nothing more than beautiful words. But the truth is, love is a decision you choose to make every single day, no matter how difficult life becomes. And that's exactly the decision I made. The day you looked at me and quietly said, "If you ever come back, don't come just to make promises. Come back to keep them." You may have said those words casually, but my heart turned them into the greatest principle of my life. From that day on, I made a promise to myself that whenever I came to you again, I wouldn't come just to leave the next day. I would come with the determination that distance would never control our story again. Time would, and this time would finally be on our side. This journey didn't begin today. It actually began the day I saw you silently crying for the very first time. You wiped away your tears, but your heart couldn't hide them. That night, I stood beside my window for hours, looking up at the sky, asking myself only one question. If my presence can bring your smile back, then why am I still so far away? That very night, I changed many of my plans. I cancelled important meetings. I handed over responsibilities to others, and I put some of my biggest dreams on hold, because in that moment I realized something. The greatest success in life isn't the one that earns applause from the world. The greatest success is seeing the person you love smile because you're finally there beside them. The next morning, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started searching for flights. Every flight I looked at carried the same thought. I wish this journey could begin right now. I wish this waiting could finally end today. When the confirm booking button appeared on my screen, my finger paused for a few seconds. It wasn't fear, it was responsibility, because I knew once I pressed that button, my life would never be the same again. I closed my eyes, remembered your smile, and with one deep breath, I pressed it. The flight was officially booked. I sat there quietly for a long time. For the first time in months, there was peace on my face, a kind of peace no achievement had ever given me. I picked up my phone, opened our conversation, typed so many words, then erased every single one of them until only one sentence remained. "Baby, don't go anywhere. I'm coming to you today. I've already booked my flight." That wasn't just a message. It was the voice of my heart, a voice that had been trying to reach you for years. I didn't know whether you would cry after reading it, smile, or simply stay silent, but I knew one thing for certain. Today, I had finally turned love into action, and that single moment changed the direction of my entire life forever. The moment I sent that message, everything inside me became strangely quiet. For months, I had imagined this exact moment. I had rehearsed it in my mind thousands of times. Sometimes I imagined you smiling. Sometimes I imagined you crying. Sometimes I imagined you refusing to answer. But no matter how many possibilities I created in my head, nothing prepared me for the silence that followed. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. My phone remained completely still. No notification, no reply, no missed call, nothing. I looked at your name on my screen over and over again. I wondered if you had already read my message. Or maybe life had become so busy that you hadn't even noticed it yet. I wanted to send another text, something simple, something like, "Did you see my message?" But I stopped myself. Love should never force an answer. If someone loves you, their heart will answer before their fingers ever touch the screen. I placed my phone on the table, walked toward the window, and watched the city moving exactly the same way it always had. Cars were rushing, people were laughing, businesses were opening. The world looked completely normal. Yet inside me, everything had changed. Because today, I was no longer living for another achievement. I was living for one meeting, one embrace, one smile, one heartbeat that I had been waiting years to hear again. A few hours later, my suitcase was lying open on the bed. I stood in front of it for several minutes without putting anything inside. Not because I didn't know what to pack, but because every shirt, every watch, every jacket reminded me of a different chapter of my life. Some had been worn during celebrations, others during difficult meetings, some during victories, others during painful goodbyes. Then I smiled because I realized none of those memories mattered anymore. The only memory I wanted to create hadn't happened yet. I folded my clothes carefully, placed them inside the suitcase. Then I opened the top drawer of my desk. There was a small notebook resting quietly beneath several documents. It looked ordinary, but it carried years of my heart. I slowly picked it up. Every page inside that notebook had your name written between the lines, even when your name wasn't actually there. Whenever life became too heavy, I wrote. Whenever I missed you, I wrote. Whenever I wanted to tell you something but couldn't, I wrote. You had no idea that while the whole world believed I was building a successful life, I was secretly building conversations with you. Inside those pages, I opened one random page. It read, "I hope one day I can stop writing about missing you because you'll finally be sitting beside me." I closed the notebook, held it against my chest, and whispered, "That day has finally come." The notebook went into my suitcase because some stories deserve to travel with us. Before leaving my house, I looked around one last time. It was strange. The walls hadn't changed. The furniture hadn't moved. Everything looked exactly the same. Yet somehow, the house already felt empty. Maybe because my heart had already left before I did. My driver arrived exactly on time. He placed my suitcase in the car, then quietly asked, "Sir, are you traveling for business?" I smiled without looking away from the road ahead and answered, "No, for someone who became more important than every business I ever built." He nodded politely. Maybe he didn't fully understand, but he respected the answer. As the car moved through the city, buildings disappeared behind us. Traffic lights turned green. Morning slowly became afternoon, and every kilometer felt like another wall falling between us. Then, suddenly, my phone vibrated. For a second, my heart completely stopped. I grabbed it so quickly that I almost dropped it. It wasn't you. Just another business notification. I laughed quietly at myself. Months ago, that notification would have excited me. Today, it meant absolutely nothing. Success changes, priorities change, life changes, and sometimes one person changes the meaning of everything you've ever worked for. About halfway to the airport, rain began falling, soft at first, then heavier. Tiny drops covered the windows until the outside world became blurry. I watched the rain silently. People usually think rain represents sadness, but not today. Today, it felt like the sky itself was washing away every painful memory I had carried for so long. Every disappointment, every lonely night, every birthday spent apart, every celebration that felt incomplete without you. The rain continued, and strangely, so did my hope. When we finally reached the airport, I stepped out of the car, took one deep breath, and looked at the enormous terminal standing before me. Thousands of strangers were walking in every direction. Some were leaving, some were arriving, some were saying goodbye, others were saying hello. Every face carried a different story. Every suitcase carried different dreams, and mine carried only one. You. I thanked my driver, picked up my luggage, adjusted my jacket, and started walking toward the entrance. Each step echoed inside my heart, not because I was afraid, but because after today, distance would no longer be an excuse. Either destiny would bring us together forever, or it would answer every question I had carried for years. As the automatic doors opened, cold air touched my face. Bright lights filled the hall. Airport announcements echoed across the ceiling. People hurried past me without knowing that, for me, this wasn't just another flight. It was the most important journey of my entire life. I tightened my grip on the handle of my suitcase, looked straight ahead, and quietly whispered your name. Then I smiled, because for the first time in years, you no longer felt impossibly far away. With every step I took toward the departure gate, I was also taking one step closer to the life I had dreamed about every single night. I stopped in front of the departure board. Hundreds of flights were listed. Different countries, different cities, different dreams. But my eyes searched for only one destination. The destination that would finally lead me to you. When I found my flight number, a quiet smile appeared on my face. For months, I had only imagined this moment. Now it was finally real. I walked toward the check-in counter. The airport was filled with voices. Children were laughing. Families were hugging each other. Business travelers were rushing from one gate to another. Everyone seemed busy with their own story. No one knew that the man standing in that line had waited years for this journey. When my turn arrived, the airline agent greeted me with a smile. She asked for my passport, my ticket, and my luggage. Everything was ready. She looked at her computer for a few seconds, then handed my boarding pass back to me. She smiled and said, "Have a wonderful flight." I smiled back, but inside my heart I whispered, "I hope this becomes the most beautiful day of my life." I picked up my passport, held the boarding pass tightly, and continued walking. Every step felt lighter than the last, as if the weight I had carried for years was slowly disappearing. While walking towards security, my phone vibrated once again. This time, it was your name. For 1 second, the entire airport disappeared, the voices around me faded, the announcements became silent. Nothing existed except your name shining on my screen. My hands trembled. I answered immediately. Before I could even say hello, I heard your voice, soft, gentle, and emotional. You stayed silent for a few seconds, then you finally spoke. Are you really coming? I closed my eyes because hearing those words was enough to break every wall inside me. I smiled and quietly replied, "Yes, I am coming. I told you. I booked my flight." There was another silence. This time, I could hear your breathing. Then I heard something else. You were crying, not loudly, not dramatically, just the kind of tears that have waited too many years to fall. I wished I could reach through the phone, hold your hands, and tell you everything is going to be all right now. Instead, I simply said, "Please don't cry anymore. Save your smile for me. I want the first thing I see when I arrive to be your smile." You laughed through your tears, and for the first time in a very long time, I laughed too. You asked me, "How long until you arrive?" I looked at my boarding pass, then answered, "Not long, just keep your promise. Don't go anywhere. Wait for me." You whispered, "I've been waiting for years. I can wait a few more hours." Those words stayed with me. Even after the call ended, I stood there holding my phone against my chest, thanking God for allowing me to hear your voice again. Security was finally complete. I entered the departure lounge. The large glass windows overlooked the runway. Several aircraft stood quietly beneath the evening sky. Ground crews moved around them, preparing each plane for another journey. I found an empty seat near the window, placed my bag beside me, and watched the airplanes taking off one after another. Every aircraft carried hundreds of people, hundreds of different stories. Some were chasing opportunities, some were returning home, some were saying goodbye forever. And I was flying toward the woman who had unknowingly become the reason I believed in love again. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. I looked at it for a long moment. Inside was something I had carried for months, not because I wasn't ready, but because I wanted the moment to be perfect. I opened the box carefully. The ring reflected the airport lights. For a second, it looked brighter than everything around me. I smiled quietly and imagined placing it in your hand, not because expensive things create happiness, but because promises deserve symbols. I closed the box again, placed it safely inside my pocket, and whispered to myself, "This time I am not leaving without giving you every promise my heart has carried." Suddenly, the airport announcement echoed through the terminal. My flight number appeared on the screen. Boarding had officially begun. People slowly formed a line. Families, couples, friends, and strangers. I stood up, adjusted my jacket, picked up my luggage, and joined them. Every step toward the boarding gate felt like another page turning in my life. The gate agent scanned my boarding pass, then smiled. "Have a pleasant journey." I thanked her, walked through the jet bridge, and for the first time, the aircraft stood only a few steps away. I placed one foot inside, then another. I paused for just a moment, looked through the small window beside the door, and smiled because somewhere beyond those clouds, you were waiting, still believing, still hoping, still holding on to the promise I had made. I quietly whispered, "Baby, don't go anywhere. I'm coming to you. I already booked my flight, and now nothing in this world could stop me from reaching you." The cabin welcomed me with a calm silence. The flight attendants greeted every passenger with warm smiles. I returned the greeting, then slowly walked toward my seat. My suitcase was no longer in my hands, but my heart still carried years of waiting. I reached my seat beside the window, placed my small bag under the seat, fastened my seatbelt, and looked outside. The runway lights stretched into the distance. Each light reminded me of another night I had spent praying for this moment. Passengers continued boarding. Some were laughing together, some were already asleep, some were listening to music, others were busy sending one final message before takeoff. I unlocked my phone, opened our conversation. Read your last message again. I'll be waiting. Only 3 words. Yet they carried more peace than thousands of conversations. I smiled without realizing it. The flight attendant began the safety demonstration. Everyone watched quietly. I listened, but my mind was somewhere else. It was already standing in front of you, imagining the moment our eyes would meet. The aircraft door finally closed. The captain welcomed everyone on board. He announced that takeoff would begin shortly. A gentle vibration moved through the cabin. The engines slowly came alive. The airplane began moving toward the runway. I looked through the window. The airport terminal slowly disappeared behind us. For a brief moment, I remembered every reason that had delayed this journey: responsibilities, work, fear, timing. Every excuse that had once seemed important, today none of them mattered anymore, because love had finally become stronger than every excuse. The airplane stopped at the beginning of the runway. Everything became still. The engines grew louder. I closed my eyes for 1 second, not because I was afraid of flying, but because I wanted to thank God for giving me another chance to keep my promise, another chance to reach the person who never stopped believing in me. A few seconds later, the engines roared. The airplane rushed forward, faster and faster, until the ground slowly disappeared beneath us. The city became smaller, roads turned into tiny lines, buildings became little shapes, clouds surrounded the aircraft. I watched everything quietly. Sometimes the hardest part of life is not taking off, it is finding the courage to leave behind everything that no longer belongs in your future. As the aircraft climbed higher, sunlight broke through the clouds. The sky looked endless. For the first time in years, my heart felt just as open. The seatbelt sign remained on. Passengers stayed quiet. Some closed their eyes. Others looked out of the windows. I leaned back, took a deep breath, and allowed my memories to return. I remembered the first day we met. I remembered how naturally you smiled, how easily you made every difficult day feel lighter. You never asked me for expensive gifts. You never cared about status. You never measured love by money. You always measured it by honesty, by loyalty, by showing up. That was the lesson that changed my life forever. People spend years building success, but forget to build trust. I promised myself that I would never become that kind of man. I wanted to become someone whose actions always spoke louder than his words. A flight attendant walked toward me. She politely asked if I would like something to drink. I accepted a cup of coffee. She smiled and continued serving the other passengers. I held the warm cup in my hands. Looking outside once again, above the clouds, everything looked peaceful. No traffic, no noise, no pressure, only silence. Sometimes life forces us to rise above our problems before we can truly understand them. From this height, the world looks so small, and suddenly, many of the things that once caused me stress seemed completely meaningless. Money can buy comfort, success can earn respect, power can open doors, but none of them can replace the feeling of hearing the voice of someone you truly love. I reached into my pocket again. The small velvet box was still there, safe, untouched, waiting for the right moment. I smiled to myself because this journey was no longer just about arriving. It was about becoming the man I had always wanted to be. A man who keeps his promises. Hours passed quietly. The cabin lights became softer. Many passengers had fallen asleep, but sleep refused to come to me. Every minute felt too precious. Every second brought me closer to you. I looked out of the window once more. The moonlight reflected across the clouds. It almost looked like an endless white ocean. I whispered your name so softly that no one around me could hear. Then I quietly smiled, just a little longer, just a few more hours. And the distance that had lived between us for years would finally come to an end. The captain's voice gently echoed through the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, we have begun our descent. Please fasten your seatbelts. I looked out of the window. The clouds slowly disappeared beneath us. A beautiful city stretched across the horizon. Its lights sparkled like thousands of stars waiting to welcome someone home. My heart began beating faster. This was no longer a dream. This was reality. Every mile that separated us was disappearing. Every second was bringing me closer to you. I reached for my phone. There was still no signal, but I smiled because this time I didn't need another